Good afternoon, and welcome to today's seminar, Building a Crisis Management Plan for Your Career, the Proactive, brought to you by the American Astronomical Society, the Society's Employment Committee, and the speaker, Alaina G. Levine. This webinar is the first of a two-part series. The second half is titled Career Planning in a Crisis, the Reactive. So please join us again for part 2, which is scheduled for June 10th. Before we begin, I have a few housekeeping items for you that I'm sure that you've heard before. First off, everyone in this webinar is in listen-only mode. However, you are strongly encouraged to share your questions by typing them into the questions pane or the box that's in the control panel. I will collect the questions for the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the AAS website within the next week. I see a few people are still logging on, and we have more than 150 attendees, so thank you all for joining. Let me introduce myself. I'm Diane Frendak. I'm the Director of Membership Services at the AAS. And instead of plugging membership, I'd like to remind everyone about the Society's upcoming summer meeting, which will be held virtually from June 1st to the 3rd. We have the usual events and great science content planned, plenaries and prize talks, town halls, the Chambliss poster competition, a virtual exhibit hall, the ability to network with other attendees, social events, including the members meeting, which I believe will be open to all, and details for that are forthcoming. So here you'll see the slide. It's kind of like a mock-up of what you'll see if you attend, and you can go to those different spaces on the bottom there. And as a reminder, please register by the May 29th deadline. Two more quick highlights. There are several committees within the AAS that are interested in collecting data about how the pandemic is affecting the professional life of those working in the astronomical sciences. We also know that survey fatigue is real, but please do participate if you receive a survey about this topic. Finally, I just want to bring to your attention a blog post by our speaker that is currently on the AAS website and will be included in this week's News Digest if you subscribe to our bi-weekly emailed newsletter. The post details all the great career content that the AAS is rolling out to members over the year. Now, let me introduce our speaker. Alaina G. Levine is an award-winning entrepreneur, STEM career consultant, science journalist, professional speaker, and corporate comedian. Her book, Networking for Nerds, beat out Einstein for reals for the honor of being named one of the top 5 books of 2015 by Physics Today magazine. She writes Your Unicorn Career, a careers column for science careers about finding your professional bliss, and is a frequent speaker for the AAS. Alaina, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Diane, and thank you to the AAS for the opportunity to present this webinar and to be a partner with you. I am very excited. This webinar is the inauguration, if you will, of a long-time partnership that is blossoming in even new directions. I'm very excited about that. I'll tell you more about that at the end, but as Diane mentioned, we're going to be doing a lot of career planning, resources and opportunities and activities specifically for you, astronomers, astrophysicists, planetary scientists, people who are educated and trained in these subjects, and even amateur astronomers, astrophysicists, and planetary scientists. We want to help you succeed. And so we're going to be launching so many different types of resources that will help you, particularly at this time in life and this time on this planet in the middle of this crisis. So stay tuned for those things. And thank you for the opportunity to work with you, the astronomical community, to help you advance your career all the way, not even into this galaxy, but to the next galaxy. How about to the next galactic cluster? Why not to the edges of the universe? Why not to the farthest reaches of the biggest, brightest GRBs? Let's move you forward. So we're in the middle of a crisis while I'm talking to you. I want to move you forward in the middle of a crisis. So we're going to be talking about how to actually plan for this crisis that we're in right now. Before I go on, I just want to tell you, as Diane mentioned, this is being recorded, but you are welcome to take photographs of any of the slides. You're welcome to tweet anything that I say. I would just ask that you would use the handle of the organization at AAS_office, and my handle at Alaina G. Levine. And join me on LinkedIn. Connect with me on LinkedIn. That's how I keep many, many different types of professionals and emerging and established leaders across the universe aware of different career planning resources. That's how I announce webinars. That's how I'll announce blogs and articles that will be of use to you. Connect with me on LinkedIn. You don't even have to customize the invitation. I'm interested to help you succeed in any way that you want. So here we are in the middle of COVID. What an odd time to be alive. What an odd time to be on this blue ball floating in the middle of the black sky. And we are all interacting with each other in new ways. Of course, we're also interacting with each other in the middle of an unprecedented ecosystem, something that we haven't experienced before, at least in our lifetimes, and not to this type of gravity, with this type of gravity. And it's something that, as we are planning our career, is going to make a huge difference in moving ourselves forward. We may have a career plan for ourselves that we put in motion perhaps even years ago that, because of COVID, has stalled. Or, as you probably have heard, there are faculty positions that postdocs and graduate students took the full 19-20 academic year to apply for. They got the offer. They were expected to start their career at a university as a faculty member this fall, only to have the university, because of budget cuts and furloughs, renege on the deal and cancel the offer. We know about opportunities that are being canceled. We know about opportunities that are being postponed. We are in the middle of a global crisis. So our webinar today and the corresponding partner webinar that's going to be happening in a few weeks on June 10th is all about how we can move our career forward in the middle of this crisis. And today, what we're going to be talking about is how to build an insurance plan into your career plan so that when a crisis hits, like the one we're experiencing now, you can put that into action and activate it so that you can continue advancing, so that you can continue getting the opportunities that you need and the opportunities that you want to move your career in the direction that you want to. It is possible to advance your career even in the middle of a crisis, even when jobs are scarce, even when jobs are being canceled. And that's what the insurance plan that we're going to be talking about is all about. So I want to start by telling you a little bit about a crisis that I had a couple of years ago. Actually, it's not a few years ago. It was in 2008, a crisis that happened to me. And when I experienced this career crisis, this career challenge, what I did was I put into place certain strategies that helped me navigate that crisis in real time. Some of those features of that strategic plan were already in place. Some of them I put into place in real time, and some of them I've actually sharpened and fine-tuned in the years since and have applied to COVID. So we're talking about a strategic plan that I have put in place for myself that is proactively ensuring me in case I have a career challenge. And make no mistake, I'm in a career challenge right now. Before I tell you about what happened 10 years ago, as a professional speaker, all of my in-person gigs in the matter of a few weeks dematerialized. They disappeared. And suddenly that was a major impact on my career, but let alone my career, it was also a major impact on my income. So I had to move quickly to put into place and actually put into action the plan I'm going to be telling you about today, so that I would be able to have insurance, so that I would have a financial cushion, I would have a time cushion, I would even have a reputation management cushion, and would allow me to continue moving my career forward. Of course, I'd be operating with different parameters. I'd be operating in a ever-changing, dynamic, and complex dynamic system, but it was something that has helped me in this crisis and has helped me in the past. So let me tell you about what happened to me, and the features that I'm listing right now on this slide, I'm actually going to go into detail throughout the webinar. This is the plan that I used, and this is the plan I fine-tuned over the years. So back in ancient days, back in 2008, I had been working for the University of Arizona. In fact, I had been working for the University of Arizona for 13 years and had been on that campus since I was 17. So I started on the U of A campus at a time when I couldn't vote, I couldn't drink, I couldn't drive, but I was a freshman, and that's where I grew up, essentially. I grew up on the University of Arizona campus in Tucson, Arizona. Started out, as you know, as an astronomy and physics, and then don't tell anyone, I got seduced by the dark side and got my degree in mathematics. Shh. But I've never left astronomy and physics. I've always been around astronomers and physicists, as you probably know, because physics and astronomy too are like the Godfather. Once you're in, you can't get out. And so I've always been interacting with this community. Anyway, so I was working first in communications and science communications for the physics department at the University of Arizona. And then later I was working in the College of Science, managing a master's program that combines science and business. And quite frankly, that's where I got first interested in how scientists could move their careers in multiple dimensions and multiple universes. Anyway, everything was going great. It was a soft money position. We were spending money. We were having programs. We were having events. The students were being recruited. They were getting valuable education. And then, oh, I don't know, 2008 hits, and suddenly there's a recession. Suddenly there's a financial crisis like we haven't seen in a generation, or less than half a generation, I would say. And certainly this was a crisis. And what happened is my position, a soft money position on grant funds, was eliminated because of budget cuts. We had run out of money and there was no other money to pay me. So this was quite a shock to me. This was quite a shock to me, although if I think about it, I actually could have seen it coming, because first of all, the parameters of the system in which I was operating, the ecosystem, the financial system, the worldwide system, the nation, the state of the field of education, the field of science, all of those different units, and I'll talk to you more about units in a moment, the ecosystem and the community, obviously there was something afoot. Obviously something was happening. I could see that something could be happening. I also knew what the budget was for my position, so I knew we were running out of money. Even though I probably could have seen it coming, at the same time, when it happened, when my boss informed me that I was going to be laid off, it was a shock. It was a shock because I had been on that campus since I was 17, and I felt so aligned with the University of Arizona, hashtag Wildcat, hashtag Bear Down. So it felt so strange to be ripped, because that's what I felt like had happened to me, ripped from this nest that had been so nurturing to me all those years. The negative emotions that I had, and I'm going to tell you more about those, but the negative emotions were of loss and grief. And I was disturbed. And of course, I was anxious because I didn't know where my next job was going to come from, especially in the middle of a recession. And I didn't know what my skills could be marketed as. I didn't understand where companies would potentially find value in my work and my outputs and the value that I had been contributing to and had created in this position. It was a very troubling time, even very sad for me. But what I did during that recession, what I did during that time when I was being laid off, was I strategically and mindfully pulled the negative emotion as much as I possibly could out of it. And this is where having studied physics, having studied mathematics really, really helped me, because I viewed it as a logic problem. It was a logic equation. A plus B plus C equals job. That's how I viewed this. And when I used my training in proofs, if this, then that, if that, then this, and logical thinking to apply this to the problem that I don't have a job, or that I'm going to be losing my job, when I used that, it was very, very helpful in helping me stay away from the negative emotions that would creep into my brain and draw me into what I call a pit of despair, because that's really what it's like. It's like a pit of despair when you lose a job. It's a loss that we don't necessarily talk about, a professional loss, and we have to grieve it appropriately. I even wrote an article about that for Science Magazine, which you can find online, about grieving professional loss. But anyway, what I did to help myself was I aimed in the front part of my brain to pull any negative emotion out of it, and in the rest of my brain to view it as a logical problem that I could actually solve. This required me to put processes into place, processes that would allow me to move forward, processes that would keep emotion out of it, actions that I could take day to day, even hour to hour, that would allow me to strip the negative emotion away, don't be drawn into the pit of despair, and continue to solve the problem, the logic problem of me getting a job. Part of those processes, one of those processes that I installed into my organization, my system, was making sure that I reviewed the record of my achievements on a regular basis. Take a look at your CV, take a look at your research and teaching and diversity and inclusion statements, take a look at your record of achievement as a scientist, as an engineer, even as a professional, no matter what profession you're in, and make note of that. You have contributed value, you have solved problems. Even students who are high school and undergrad students, you have contributed value to the community through actions relating to school projects or short-term research assignments or tasks that you've done, even tests that you have done well with and learned the material, demonstrates you contributing to the community. And that through your knowledge acquisition, that is something that when you're in the middle of a pit of despair and when you're in the middle of a crisis, we have to go back to our record. We have to take a look at the facts of how awesome you are. This is absolutely imperative because in the middle of a crisis like what we're experiencing right now with COVID, when you are facing career challenges and career stops and gaps, and you're not able to get back to the observatory or to the lab or to your research group, or your dissertation or your project for your postdoc or what have you is on hold, to potentially help us get away from the pit, not be pulled back into that pit of despair, we have to look at our record of achievements. We have to see that we have actually achieved actions that are important, value that we have contributed, knowledge that we have acquired, because those are facts. It's not opinion. If you wrote a paper, that's a fact. If you took a test and got an A, that's a fact. It's not an opinion. And in the middle of a crisis, a part of our brain that deals with imposter syndrome, that part of our brain, which is insidious and evil and disgusting, will tell us that give us fake news about ourselves, will tell us that we are not smart enough, or there's something wrong with us, or that we are not valuable enough because we didn't achieve that milestone in the middle of a crisis. And that's ridiculous. We have to fight against that imposter syndrome. What we do to fight it, what we do to combat it, is use the facts of our life. That's why you look at the record. I also really relied on a diversity of skills. I knew years ago that for any professional to be successful, even if you want to be professional, even if you want to be successful in a quote unquote traditional arena, so you are studying astronomy and astrophysics and planetary science, and you want to become a professor or a researcher in that subject, that's a quote unquote the traditional path, right? In the past, it's been a traditional path. Even if you want to continue with that, you still have to diversify your skills. You have to diversify your management and your soft skills and your leadership and your team building and your communication skills. You have to know negotiation and conflict resolution and all sorts of other skills. I already knew that in the past before my layoff. I had been diversifying my skills for years. When I was in the layoff, I activated that part of my brain and that part of my record to start thinking about what else could I do for other potential employers with the diversity of skills that I had acquired, with the diversity of skills I had honed. Again, all these things I'm going to go into detail in the webinar today. I just wanted to sort of give you an overview based on my experience. I had my marketing materials ready to go. Those are your CVs, your resumes, your cover letters, right? Multiple cover letters, your elevator pitch or your 30-second commercial, the email that you would send to somebody to introduce yourself and to ask for an informational interview or an informal conversation. And of course, your research statement, your teaching statement, your D&I statements. So these things I had all ready to go, but when you're in the middle of a crisis, it's also a fantastic time to just take another look at it and start editing and customizing them and tweaking them for this purpose. I had a personal board of directors in place. I'm going to tell you more about that too. This was an assembly that existed not in real space, but in my mind of real people. So the people existed, but the assembly itself did not, of people that I knew over the years were my supporters. I knew they had my back, and I knew they would help me during this very tumultuous time in my life. So I assembled them, I contacted them, I talked with them, I got assistance from them. I'll tell you more. I had been networking for years, and if you saw my earlier webinar about networking, we can network right now from afar. We can engage in virtual networking. I'll tell you more about that too. But I had been networking for years, but when my crisis hit, I immediately put my networking into high gear, and I engaged in what I call high impact networking, where I was contacting multiple people every week, every month, to talk to them about how I could potentially help them in this scenario. In other words, what can I do for them? Because that's what networking is about. Even though the crisis was my own, right? My own layoff, of course, in the middle of an economic recession, I was the one who had been laid off. It was still important for me to communicate to them how I could potentially help them. We're going to talk more about that. I'm very excited to share that with you. Of course, I needed to do a personal financial wellness check. I needed to know exactly how much money I had, how much money I had access to, how much money, how long could I go without a paycheck, what things could I cut. I acted entrepreneurially, and I thought more diversely about what types of organizations might be able to hire me, what types of clients might be able to engage me, what types of employers would want to bring me onto their teams. And that meant I had to think about what other types of problems could I solve besides the ones I had already been solving at the University of Arizona. And above all, I maintained compassion for myself. This is absolutely critical. I'd say this is probably your first and your last, and it's something that you would do throughout the strategy, is always, always, always maintain compassion and graciousness for yourself in the middle of a crisis. It is going to be very challenging to manage yourself in the middle of a crisis. And quite frankly, in the middle of this COVID crisis, it's very, very challenging to not be sad, to not be anxious, to not be depressed. I myself have felt these feelings on a regular basis since the quarantine and even before. And I imagine that I will be feeling these things in the future as well. We're not back to normal. We're not even close. And one thing that I have striven, including one thing I've striven to do, two things I've striven to do is, one, I've decided to create new words when I possibly can. The second thing I've striven to do is to have compassion for myself. So even when I create a new word in real time on a webinar that's being recorded, I'm not going to be mad at myself. I'm going to be happy because, hey, that was kind of creative. Stroven, #Stroven. That's what we're striving to do, is be compassionate for ourselves. You will make mistakes. You will fumble. There will be unhappiness. There will be even failures achieving the metrics of success that you're hoping to achieve. But if you have compassion for yourself and you follow this process, you will be able to move forward. And that's the key. We want to be able to move you forward in some way. So the idea is that there are actions that you can do right now to plan for a crisis later. So this webinar today, interestingly, we called it the proactive because we're thinking about what plan can we put into place, quote unquote, should a crisis occur. And a crisis is occurring right now. The plan we use today to be proactive in dealing with a crisis for our career, we can activate right now. And then on June 10th, we're going to talk about the reactive. We're going to talk about other things that we can do to react to the crisis to move our career forward. But in all these things, whether we're being proactive or reactive, we absolutely have to be honest with ourselves. We have to be honest about what we can do and what we want and need to do, where we could work. What about our financial health? We absolutely need to be honest with ourselves about that, and don't mess around with that type of thing. All right, so phase one, after we've recognized that we're in the middle of a crisis, we acknowledge it, right? We don't say, hey, I'm just going to pretend it's not happening. Nothing's happening. Everything's cool here. Nothing to look at. No, we're in the middle of a crisis, and it sucks so much. And it sucks worse for different people, and you're going to be experiencing this crisis in a different way from other people. But one thing is for sure, we are all experiencing this crisis. So we're going to have compassion for ourselves. We're going to do what we can to remove negative emotion from this equation, the equation of moving our career forward. It's very, very difficult. But I want to tell you this, that you not having a job or not having a job opportunity lined up immediately, or you having a contract reneged on that you've waited a year and done the academic job search and job interviewing for the last academic year, you not having that job going forward has absolutely nothing to do with you as a valuable human being. Please remember that. Do not let imposter syndrome take over your brain and make you think fake facts, fake news about you, about your value. It's very, very crucial to be aware of that. When imposter syndrome seeps into your brain, you have to punch it out. You have to get rid of it. And you have to recognize factually and logically, you not having a job right now and you not having a job lined up right now has absolutely nothing to do with your value. We are in a complex system. It is a complex system, and I mean that from a mathematical perspective. It is a dynamic system. It's changing in real time. There are going to be new news in the near future, and I mean by the next minute, the next hour, the next day, the next weeks, and so forth, that are going to change the ecosystem. It's going to change the parameters in which we're operating. So what we have to do is we have to act carefully and deliberately and meaningfully every day to remove that negative emotion. Because what that negative emotion does is it weighs you down and it clogs your brain so that you cannot think creatively about where you could work and who could be a new employer for you. Maybe you've been thinking only about X type of employers. Well, now we're in the crisis. Maybe we could diversify and think, well, why wouldn't Y employers, why wouldn't Z type of organizations be interested in us? We can't even begin to be that creative and innovative in our thinking if we are burdened by negative emotion and fake news about ourselves. So we have to punch that out. So we engage in the self-compassion and the self-care. We recognize that we're going to be flexible and adaptive and adaptable in the scenario. And this is something, of course, we get from studying STEM, quite frankly. So we engage that training that we have. Use your training, Luke. Use your training to make yourself understand that you can strip the negative emotions out and be flexible in this scenario in real time, and appreciate yourself for what you're able to achieve day to day. One of the things that I did, this is part of my process, and this is something I actually highly recommend that you do even today, especially if you are having some specific career challenges. You are not able to get a job at the moment, or your job offer was reneged, or you're not sure where you're going to be in the next few months. You need to see progress. You need to see that you are achieving success even in the middle of this crisis. So how do you do that? You do what I do, which is you make a list of small, measurable, quite simply easy tasks that you can do every day that do not require any emotion. So for example, I now have a COVID quarantine notebook, and I did that. That's part of my process. I wanted to make it almost like a special occasion. It was something that I keep on my table. I go to it every morning. In that notebook, I have a list of items, of tasks that I aim to achieve every day. And then I write down all the dates and I check off when I do it. And my goal is to see over the course of a day, over the course of a few days, over the course of a few weeks, how many check marks I have next to each item. What are those items on my list? Get up. That's one of my items. Make my bed. Get dressed. That might be nice, not to wear pajamas for like 17 days in a row. Those things make a difference for me to be able to see that I am making achievements, that I am making progress, even in the middle of a crisis. So those are small things that I do, but another larger thing that I do that does not require emotion, any emotion, whether positive or negative, is I write down one of my tasks is respond to emails, because I'm getting inundated with emails, as you probably are as well. I might be behind, so I'm going to make sure that I respond to emails, and I'm going to put that on there. I exercise, I put that on there too. Now, do I exercise every day? Heck no, I don't. Do I make my bed every day? No, I don't. But I'm doing the best that I can, minute to minute, day to day. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be flexible. I'm going to be compassionate with myself, remove those negative equations, those negative feelings from the equation. And the reason why we do this task list is because it actually trains your brain into taking actions in the middle of this very challenging, very difficult, mentally difficult ecosystem that we're in this crisis, it trains your brain to make steps forward, to move forward without emotion. So that when you're engaged in the higher stake type of activities, such as networking, such as applying for jobs, such as having conversations with potential employers, you will have less negative emotion because you will have already trained yourself to have that negative emotion stripped out. It's very, very useful. It's something that has helped me significantly. So the next thing we do is we view this as a logic problem, as an actual equation. Now, who knows how to solve problems better than anyone ever in the history of the humanity and history of universe? It's people who have studied STEM. You are natural problem solvers, and the process of becoming an astronomer, even early in your career as an undergraduate student, even going back as a high school student, even those of you who are amateur astronomers and astrophysicists, the skills that you've gained to study the stars, to study the gamma ray bursts, to study the universe, those skills are actually absolutely vital in helping you to solve problems of other types of ecosystems. So the same training and education that you use to solve astronomical and cosmological problems, you can use to solve the problem, the logic problem of getting a job, because this is an equation. But you do have to remember that this is business, it's not personal. And what I mean by that is no negative emotion. Remember that old quote from the movie, what was the movie? The quote was, the movie was A League of Their Own. It was about women baseball players, I believe in World War II, a women baseball league in the United States. And Tom Hanks was the coach in that movie. And he said, there's no crying in baseball. Well, there's no crying in astronomy either. And we're not going to cry in this crisis about our careers. We can cry about other things like me, we'd be crying, but not going to cry about our careers because this is a business situation. This is a logic problem that we can solve. Here is the problem. Here's the equation without any negative emotion. We're going to start by collecting data about different units of consideration, which I'm going to show you on the next slide, including ourselves and the ecosystem in which we're operating. Then we're going to start to communicate that data. That's the marketing aspect. That's using your CV and resume and going on LinkedIn and engaging people at the AAS virtual meeting, the summer meeting, talking to people, networking, go to their talks. That's part of your marketing strategy. Then we're going to find partners. That's part of your networking strategy. That's going to lead to more of an understanding of the state of units of consideration. This will allow us to start proactively, strategically, and smartly applying for jobs, which will then lead us to getting the job. So this is our equation. We're going to solve this equation. And we can do this without emotion. And we can use our STEM education and training in problem solving to do this in a very effective way. So I mentioned the units of consideration. So this is something you want to always be aware of in any type of scenario. What are the units that you need to consider that are influencing your actions, that are influencing the larger systems activities and the temperature and the barometer of the system? So here's how we think about it. We start with the most fundamental unit in the larger system. The most fundamental unit here is the individual. It's you or it's me. That's the individual. That's the fundamental unit here. The next larger unit is your organization. And I mean your university, your research institute, your company, whatever organization you happen to be aligned with right now. And that could be your organization as a student, right? You're the university that you attend, that you're getting your PhD in, or even your postdoc training in, that is your organization. You could even put in there a smaller unit in between individual and organization, which could be your team. The next higher level of unit is the community, and the community means two things. It means both the field of study, the field that you want to go into. So that could be both astronomy and something more specific like gamma ray bursts, like cosmological tools, like AGN, active galactic nuclei. It could be something very specific like that, or larger, more broadly like astronomy and astrophysics. And your community also includes your geography. So it actually includes two types of communities: the global community of the field and the local community of where you're physically located right now. And then the largest the largest unit that we're thinking about right now is the ecosystem. So that incorporates the financial systems, that incorporates the political systems, that incorporates the national and the provincial and the state and the local government actions, and all the different elements that go into that ecosystem. It's the larger sort of sea in which we're operating, the ocean in which we're moving around in. When you know what the units of consideration are, and you can analyze those units carefully and see what is going on with each of those units, you get more data. The more data you have, the better decisions you can make. The more broad decisions and more specific decisions you can make, and the better you can build an insurance plan into your crisis management plan for your career, because you always have to be aware of all parameters that influence you, the most fundamental unit in the entire system. Now, I also mentioned part of the way we really navigate a crisis and put into place a crisis management plan, a proactive crisis management plan for our career, is to always go back to the facts. We don't operate on opinions here. We operate on facts. So look at your record of achievement. This is a perfect time for you to actually pull out your master CV on your home device, the CV or the resume that you've been building and adding to over the years, that lists out all the different projects you've been involved in, the teams you've contributed to, the volunteer experiences you've had, the committees you've been on, not to mention the papers and the presentations, the projects, any sort of actions that you've been can show you that you have added value, that you have solved problems, that you have contributed to your community, to your field, to the global field community. This is going to be very important. So you want to keep this updated all the time. That's part of your process, that's part of your plan. But you know, one of the things that I do, particularly in the middle of COVID and particularly in the middle of the crisis I had 10 years ago when I was laid off, I went back to my resume. I took a look at it, as I needed to see facts. I needed to know, wait a second, there's nothing wrong with me that I'm being laid off. Look at what I've done. Look at what I've achieved. Look at all the skills that I've gained. So this data from my brain, which was already on my resume, was absolutely essential in keeping me calm, having compassion for myself, keeping me calm and staying away from the negative emotions. So what you can also ask yourself is, what problems have you solved? What problems have you solved, not just on a large scale, like for your dissertation or your master's thesis or your postdoc appointment, but what problems have you solved daily, weekly, monthly, in a school project, in a team that you were involved in a leadership role that you took in the community? What solutions did you come up with, and what were the results of your solutions? Very, very useful to think of your value in terms of problem, solution, result. In fact, that's actually how you organize your CV and your resume, even your LinkedIn profile. Problem, solution, result. Try to find metrics of success associated with the metrics of success for the ecosystem in which you want to engage in, and quantify that success. So your results could have a number. We're not making up a number. We're not faking a number, but use a real number. In other words, did you write a computer program that increased the efficiency of the system by 50%? Did you write 5 grant proposals that resulted in $10,000 in grant funding for the organization? Those numbers tell the story. They tell the context and significance of your problem-solving ability. It's especially useful to use numbers when you are moving beyond the immediate field or the immediate standard ecosystem in which you've operated before. So if you're pivoting your career or need to pivot your career, those numbers are going to be absolutely useful to tell readers, to tell decision makers why you are valuable to them. So the quantification could be any type of quantification. I give you a couple of examples here, including maybe you led and trained a team of 5 undergrad and graduate students and postdocs. Maybe you raised 50% of the budget for the lab. Maybe you decreased the cost of the mission by implementing new processes. Maybe you presented at 1 conference or presented at 2 conferences. Those numbers are going to be absolutely crucial in helping you understand the value that you've created. Now, some of you have seen this next tool before, but I wanted to share it with you in case you haven't. And again, you're welcome to take a photograph of this. This skill inventory matrix is absolutely very useful in downloading data from your own brain to understand how valuable you are. So it's a private document. You don't have to show this to anybody. You don't have to show it to your PI, your partner, your parent, your puppy, or your cactus. You just use it for yourself, and you use it to populate your master CV and your customized CVs and resumes for specific opportunities that you're going for. So what's in the skill inventory matrix? So first of all, we list out any of the experiences you've had, jobs, research assistantships, volunteer experiences, internships, and so forth. You list out the technical skills associated with that experience. You list out the business skills, the communications, the procurement, human resources, mentoring, training, things like that. You list out the soft skills, such as leadership and team building, and then you think about your characteristics. What were the attributes that you realized about yourself from that experience? You know, I realized I work really well with a large team, or as a result of COVID, in fact, you could put COVID crisis as one of your experiences on this skill inventory matrix and list out all the different skills that you have used to manage your life and your career and your family and your cactus patch in the middle of this crisis. I keep mentioning cacti because I live in Arizona, so you know the state is cactus country. But you could actually put COVID as one of the experiences, because I want you to see what you realized about yourself, not to mention all these skills that you gained, what you realized about yourself in the middle of this crisis. You know, I work really well under pressure. I can work really well while I'm hysterically crying. I can work really well in pajamas. I work really well independently. I've been working at home remotely. I work well not necessarily interacting with people on a regular basis. I also have developed skills using Zoom, using GoToMeeting, using all these different online platforms. There are a lot of skills that you could have gained from, and attributes that you have realized about yourself, including your bravery, including your guts, including your grit, that you have realized about yourself in the middle of this crisis. So you can use that as a way to extract data from your brain. So you use the skill inventory matrix. You can also use as another tool called a SWOT analysis. Strengths and weaknesses are intrinsic to us. So we think about what are our strengths and what are our weaknesses? What could we improve on? And maybe during this crisis that we could take this opportunity to improve on those weaknesses. And then we think about what our opportunities and threats would be available to us in the future. That data is extrinsic to us. That will come from networking. But the SWOT analysis, I encourage you to keep actively adding to. So your record of achievements includes your master CV and your resume. It's going to help you emotionally, but you will refine these things as you gather information from your research and networking about different units within the system. So as you talk to people within your organization and your team, you're going to customize your document. As you talk to people in your field and in your geography, you're going to customize it, because there might be specific skills that are more needed at this moment than other skills. You're going to customize it based on what the ecosystem is like. We are not necessarily, we're going to see a lot of furloughs and more layoffs, in particular in academia. We already know this. So that's part of the ecosystem. So we have to be aware of what other types of ecosystems or what other types of organizations we could potentially work for, knowing that the universities and the research institutions might be tightening their budgets and there might not be as many opportunities to pursue in the near future. That's a useful piece of information, that's useful data. That helps us to customize our CV and our resume so that we can target other types of organizations, companies, nonprofits, and even startups and other types of entrepreneurial endeavors. I mentioned diversification. Diversify, diversify, diversify. Know what is your primary skill or skill set, but then you have other skills. Some of those you'll get from that data collection from doing the skill inventory matrix. But I want you to be thinking, looking at the ecosystem, constantly taking its temperature. What trends are leading to the need for new skills? What gaps exist right now that you can fill that are specialized skills? Those types of skills, that type of diversification is going to be absolutely crucial in the middle of a crisis. So proactively planning for a crisis means that in advance, we have to diversify our skills. We cannot just rely on skills being a quote unquote researcher, we have to rely on other skills as well. So this is the time to learn how to code. This is the time to take a course on executive presence or emotional intelligence or negotiation or strategic planning or project management. This is the time to diversify those skills so that when opportunities arise, you are ready and you're able to communicate that you have multiple skills and can meet multiple needs as they arise within the ecosystem. So I encourage you at this moment, and also if you had a time machine to go back in time, because of course this is a proactive strategic plan workshop, to engage in projects, even volunteer opportunities that will give you the ability to learn and hone different skills. I had already known to do this back in the ancient days when I started my career. I had been very active in the community. In fact, I pursued volunteer opportunities while I was working full-time all the time, whether they were leadership roles in local organizations or national organizations, or they were leadership roles in local organizations. For example, I wanted to learn more about science communications and science public relations in another type of system besides a university where I was working. So I volunteered for the local science fair and I did public relations and I helped organize their volunteer training one year for the science fair in Tucson, Arizona. Another opportunity I pursued was helping to do communications and public relations for the Arizona International Film Festival because I wanted to learn how film festivals operate. That gave me a new window into other types of systems, other types of organizations and industries. It also helped me to hone my skills in different areas. In fact, one of those opportunities working for the science fair allowed me the first opportunity I had to write a speech, a formal speech, which I wrote for the local congressman. And so I was able to put on my resume and in my skill set that I had speech writing experience. That's the kind of thing I want you to be pursuing. That's the kind of thing that can give you the cushion and the insurance policy to manage during a crisis. Networking will help with this, quite frankly. We'll talk more about that momentarily. So we want to edit, refine, customize, tweak, and then refine again and prepare to offer your marketing materials to potential employers, to potential clients. I use that word client to mean any organization or any individual within an organization that is going to invest resources in you, such as money, such as hiring you to do a job. And that could be for a short-term project or a long-term project. It could be freelance or contract. It also could be full-time and permanent. So any time I use the word client, that's what I'm referring to. So we're marketing our value to clients, to employers who could potentially hire us. So we need to make sure that all of these records, all of these marketing materials are sharp and are ready to go. So we're going to incorporate and edit and look at our resume. We're going to look at our CV, we're going to look at our cover letter templates and see what we can do to improve those and to edit those. We're going to sharpen up and hone up our LinkedIn profile at this moment. Any other online presence, if you have a CV floating around online or a website, you want to make sure that that's updated. You want to update all your statements, your elevator pitches. Get these together now and have several versions of these depending on what type of organization or sector you would apply for, using their language, using the language of a company. If you want to go into data science, using that language. If you want to go into aerospace, using that language. If you want to go work for in an outreach position for a museum, using that language. So multiple versions of each of these documents ready to go so that when that crisis hits, like right now, you're able to, in your networking, talk to somebody and say, oh, here's my resume. Oh, you work for a museum, here's my resume, here's my CV. Now, I mentioned earlier about a personal board of directors. Mentors are very important, and a personal board of directors can include your mentors, who are your advisors, your guides. By the way, a mentor doesn't have to be a formal mentor like your postdoc advisor or your PI. It could be somebody informally who has been advising you. But a personal board of directors you get from networking over time. So this would be a proactive action you could put into place, is to start thinking about the people around you, field-wise, not necessarily geographic-wise, who have shown their utmost support for you over the years, who've shown you that you are somebody they care about, whose career they want to see shine, whose efforts they want to see help manifest into something that you consider to be success. They are your partners. So this board of directors, as I mentioned, it's an assembly that exists in your mind. They don't even interact with each other, but it's a group of people that you can call upon when you do have a crisis. And they don't physically meet, but they are people that you know will actually help you. So what I would do right now is I would think about right now, who are 3 or 4 people that could serve on my personal board of directors, and start investing in and nurturing those relationships. And for more information about this, I actually wrote an article about this very recently for Science Magazine, Science Careers. It's called "A Personal Board of Directors Can Help You Navigate Your Career, Challenges in Your Career." And you can take a look at that online for free. Your ongoing networking plan. Networking, just to remind you, is not me trying to get something from you. Networking is the most honorable endeavor in which you can engage, because networking is built on a spirit of generosity. Networking is about, what can I do for you? How can I inject value into your team? How can I help you move your agenda? Networking is about a long-term relationship in which we are building win-win partnerships where we're both providing value to each other. With that in mind, we absolutely have to network. Now, if you had a time machine, first of all, I'd hope you tell me. Second of all, I hope you would tell my former self in the past that you have a time machine so I can access it in the future, which would be my past. I also hope that if you have a time machine, you'd go back in time and you would actually start networking. But you know what? I don't think you have a time machine, and that's cool. We can still be BFFs. We're still besties, okay? It's totes fine that you don't have a time machine that you're willing to share with me. Okay, I get it. You don't have a time machine. All right, stop already. You don't got one. No problem. We can start networking today. So here's what we can do. This is a task that I encourage you to take advantage of. To actually, I encourage you to put this task on your list. Pick a realistic number of conversations or people that you could reach out to each week or each month or every 2 weeks. I usually start with the number 10. So I say to myself, I am going to reach out to 10 new people every 2 weeks, asking them not for a job, asking them for an informal conversation for 15 minutes to discuss the potential to collaborate. This builds the relationship. This shows me you're not trying to get something from me. You're legitimately and genuinely interested in learning what it is that you could potentially do for me now and in the future. I'm more likely to answer an email like that than somebody who emails me and says, I lost my job. Do you have a postdoc? Do you have a job? Do you have a job? Give me a job. I need a job. Do you have a job? That is, nobody wants to get that email, because we don't want to feel like we're being used, but we do want to feel like you are interested in engaging us in a mutually beneficial alliance over the long term. So can you realistically reach out to 10 new people every 2 weeks with the idea that you'll probably only have about 5 of those 15-minute Zoom calls or phone calls or WhatsApp appointments, just in the first iteration as you're refining your language. So you can definitely have 5 15-minute phone calls in the next 2 weeks, right? So that's why we start with a number like 10. And of course, anybody that you ask, you're going to say, who else should I be speaking to about this? And they will almost always give you another person. So very, very quickly, your number of people that you're networking with is going to multiply. Now, this is something you can do in the past to build a proactive plan for a crisis, but it is something that you can absolutely do today. Take a look at the webinar that I did in the recent past for the AAS on networking from afar, where I give you lots of tips about how to do that. We want to do an ecosystem health check, right? Thinking about all those units of consideration. So we're going to take a look at industry clusters. An industry cluster is a critical mass of like-minded organizations, companies, even programs from universities that are tied to a geographic region. The tie to the geographic region is the important part here. So examples of industry clusters are high tech in the Bay Area, biotech in San Diego and Boston, and here in Tucson, where I live, astronomy, quite frankly, but also related to that is optics. We have a lot of optics companies, optics and photonics and organizations, optics and photonics students, astronomy students, and astronomical instrument experts who have spun off companies and spun off projects. This has created a critical mass of optics companies in the region. It has attracted more experts in optical sciences and engineering and photonics engineering and science. And it is a significant economic driver within the region. Optics spends so much money in Tucson and in the state of Arizona in more broadly. What this means for you is that you want to know two things. First of all, if you want to work in astronomical instruments, for example, or if you want to work in biotech, for example, it's useful to know where in the world the biotech industry clusters exist or the optics and astronomical instrument clusters exist, because there's going to be a critical mass of companies, which means there'll be lots more jobs in those regions. That's one aspect of the clusters. The second aspect of the clusters is in the geographic region you're in right now, it's very useful to know what are the clusters in the region I'm in. So you can Google this. You can look up industry clusters in my city. You can look at the economic development partners in the region, take a look at the chambers of commerce. You can also read economic indicator publications or business publications from the regions that you're in or the regions you want to go to, because they will give you information about the health of the ecosystem. Aim to keep yourself apprised of these various aspects of the economic health of the ecosystem by reading these things and by engaging the industry clusters as much as possible. We are also doing a financial wellness check for ourselves. We need to know how much money can we actually operate on right now? How much money does it cost to live where we are? How long can I go without a paycheck? So we're going to actually make a budget for ourselves. We're going to see where we're spending money. Where is the money going out? What money is coming in? If no money is coming in, what can I cut? So this is my pie chart, right? So I spend money on food because I'm a human. I'm not necessarily spending money on transportation right now, but that, for me personally, but that might be something you're paying for at the moment. Of course, we're paying for housing. We're paying for clothing, although that budget number could be lower as well. I don't have children, and that's why I said I don't have child, because I don't have children, so I don't speak children speak. But you might have children and might have to, at least in the near future, pay for childcare. And I think we can all agree that we all have cupcakes in our budget. So where are the things that we can cut? I think we can cut clothing costs before we can cut cupcakes. But realistically, what are the things you can cut? And what are you actually spending money on right now? How much money do you actually have access to at this moment? Save an amount that makes sense for you. That's what you would do in the proactive planning. On June 10th, when I talk about the reactive planning, I will talk about what we should do right now about our financial health check. So stay tuned. A real major key aspect of building our plan from engaging ourselves and navigating this crisis for our career is to think entrepreneurially. What does an entrepreneur do? An entrepreneur looks for new problems that need to be solved, looks for walls that need to be knocked down that are impeding innovation, looks for gaps in systems that you could help fill, looks for pain points in systems that you could help alleviate. That's what you have to think about. You have to become a career entrepreneur and think innovatively about the different type of work you'll do, where you'll work, who you'll work with, what institution you'll work for and with, what type of skills you could potentially use. That's the diversification, of course, about the work-life balance, and most importantly, what problems only you personally can solve. Have compassion. Have gratitude for yourself. Thank yourself. Look what you did today. You got up. That's an achievement in the middle of a pandemic, a global pandemic that we've never experienced. That's an achievement. Have patience for yourself and flexibility. All these things are part of the self-care, absolutely important. To maintain your compassion for yourself in the middle of this crisis, I want you to acknowledge to yourself that this is not easy. It may seem like there's more downs than ups. There's more potential challenges than achievements, or failures than successes for long stretches of time. But having these processes in place will keep you objectively focused, stripping away that negative emotion, keeping you focused on that logic problem, which is the key to solving this problem, to getting you a job, to moving you forward in your career, to building an insurance plan. And yet you will stumble. So adjust yourself. Adjust your processes, be flexible, be kind, and recognize this, that every move you make is actually very positive, because you are gathering data and about yourself, about the system, about the units of consideration. You are sharpening your skills in all sorts of different dimensions, And interestingly, you are also sharpening and developing and cultivating stronger marketing skills, which are absolutely needed in the middle of a crisis. So with that, I want to thank you very much. A couple of quick announcements before we take questions. As a reminder, you are welcome to tweet anything I say and take photographs. I hope that if you do tweet, and I encourage you to, that you use the handle for AAS at AAS_office and my handle at Alaina G. Levine. You are invited to connect with me on LinkedIn so I can connect with you and keep you apprised of many different career opportunities and career resources, including free webinars. We are going to be offering webinars. You say you like webinars? Do you like webinars? Well, guess what? Astronomers, astrophysicists, cosmologists, and planetary scientists, have I got a deal for you? We got webinars bizarre. We got webinars galore coming out every other week for the next 15 months. Did I say 15 months? Yes, because you are so awesome. So sign up, stay tuned for our next webinars. These are just a few of them that are going to be coming up. They will be on the website. You will get information about how to access these. These are just a few of them. And we're going to have panel webinars. It's not just going to be me speaking, but we're going to invite experts in different fields like data science, like aerospace engineering, like other types of industries that you might be interested in, to join me for webinars to talk about the state of affairs in their ecosystem and how you can pursue a career in those places as well. I want to remind you, of course, to register by Friday, 29 May for the virtual conference, the very first AAS virtual conference, the 236th meeting of the AAS. And of course, I will be presenting many different types of career planning resources over the coming months, including those webinars, but also I'll be writing tip sheets and blogs and articles. I'm even going to be producing sets of templates for your CV, for your resume, and other marketing materials, all accessible to members. So if you haven't joined AAS, this is a perfect time to do so, so you can get access to the member-only content and benefits. I want to thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure, but more importantly, quite frankly, it's a privilege. It's a privilege and an honor to work with you, to collaborate with you on behalf of your careers. I want to see you succeed in any realm that you want. And I really do know, not believe, I know for a fact that that will happen even in the middle of this crisis. So I'm not going to wish you good luck, but I will say I'm with you. We can do this together. Thank you so much. And Diane, I think we might have a few questions, right?
Oh, yes, we do, actually. And here's the first one, and it's regarding diversifying skills. And the question is, do we need to be concerned about our CV or LinkedIn profile looking too scatterbrained or padded if we fill it with all our skills and experiences, like wearing too many hats in your jobs, research, teaching, mentoring, plenty other stuff?
So first of all, thank you for that fantastic question. What a great, totally appropriate question to ask. So just a couple of things. First of all, we never pad our CV or resume, meaning we never put fluff. We never put things that are not facts about ourselves. So that's one aspect. I just wanted to clarify that. But yes, how do we write a CV or a LinkedIn profile, especially a LinkedIn profile that's seen by the public, that is helping us to clarify our value to potential employers, including those diversified skills, without looking like we are wearing 30 different hats or we are scattered. So one way to manage that, there's a couple of ways I'd think about that. First of all, the list that you listed, the research, the teaching, the mentoring, volunteer, those are all absolutely relevant, particularly for those of you who want to pursue academic research related careers. So those things are not scattered at all. I would absolutely encourage you to put that on your LinkedIn profile. But other types of skills that might be relevant, how do you decide to put it on your LinkedIn profile? How do you decide to put it on your customized CV? And that's the key, the customized CV, from your networking, from talking to different people in different types of ecosystems and industries and organizations. You will get a sense of where are the problems that exist, particularly right now in the crisis, that I can help solve with my skill set. And that will help you to create a customized CV that will be targeted for that person or that organization. And similarly, it will give you language and skills and ideas as to how you could refine your LinkedIn profile to meet a particular industry, particularly if that is where the opportunities lie. You can still include on your LinkedIn profile that you have interest in multiple industries, that you have expertise in multiple, fields. That's totally fine. That doesn't show that you're scattered. I think diversification of skills is very important. But at the top of your LinkedIn profile, you can actually have a headline. And the headline is where I would use a couple of the keywords that really describe who you are and what types of high-level skills that you would use or high-level problems that you would solve for a client or an employer. That's where you can demonstrate that you aren't scattered. You have multiple skills, you work in multiple dimensions, but you are still a professional in those. So we'll talk more about this when I do the webinar on LinkedIn, which is coming in the next few weeks, but it's a really important question, and I don't want you to fear at this moment that you're going to look scattered. Most importantly, just get that data out of your brain onto a piece of paper. So thank you for that question.
All right, the next one is more about networking. What networking advice would you give an undergraduate student that is interested in pursuing a PhD?
Thank you for that, and awesome that you're thinking about doing a PhD. So as an undergrad, we can actually do some really great high impact networking. And again, I just want you to remind you to go back to the recording of the webinar that I did for the AAS a few weeks ago on networking from afar, which goes into excruciating detail about this subject. But let me give you some tips. So first of all, recognize that as an undergrad, reaching out to PhD programs, that is not something that all undergraduates do. Oftentimes undergraduates, when they want to pursue a PhD or even a master's, they do a little research online. They find out what types of programs exist at different institutions. They get more information. They apply for those graduate programs, and then maybe they do an in-person interview. Of course, this was back in the day before COVID and the quarantine. But what you can do to set yourself apart is engage in networking with those PhD programs. So what I would do is I would come up with a list of 20 PhD programs that sound interesting to you. And they could be the university itself sounds interesting, the department itself sounds interesting, the program itself in the subfield that you're interested in pursuing sounds interesting. So any of those factors. And then I would reach out to the graduate coordinator in that department. So every department, for example, in every astronomy department, at least in the United States, and I believe in other nations around the world, there is a faculty member who runs the graduate program. That faculty member is in charge usually of both the master's and the PhD. They're a faculty member. They're a professor in astronomy. So you can email that person and say, I'm interested in applying for a PhD, to get a PhD in your program. I'd like to speak with you and learn more about the program and the features and see if I would be a good fit. Could we have a 15-minute Zoom or Skype or WhatsApp call to talk about it? And how amazing is that you had the guts to do that? Most undergrads wouldn't. And you're getting important data about the department and the groups and where you could potentially thrive as a research assistant in that department and what teams you could potentially join and what projects you could contribute to. You're getting inside information, and at the same time, you're demonstrating to that graduate coordinator, somebody who most likely is on the committee of people who decides who gets admitted to the program, that you are somebody they should really highly consider because of your guts, because of your intelligence, because of your ambition, because of your curiosity, because of your grit. So these things will come out as you're engaging in that type of networking. So reach out to the graduate coordinator, start with that person, and then you can ask him or her, who else should I be talking to? I want to do a PhD relating to gamma ray bursts. So who in the department would be a good person to talk to about this? And now suddenly your network is expanding in that department. So that's a really very simple way of getting started with networking to build your reputation as somebody who is curious and smart and ambitious. You do not have to be an expert in astronomy to join an astronomy PhD program. It's expected that you're not an expert, which is why you're going to get the PhD or the master's degree. But what you do have to demonstrate is in raw intelligence, curiosity, ambition, excitement, and passion and enthusiasm for that department, for this field, for this subfield. You show that in your networking, this is going to give you an advantage. So great question. I'm so glad you're thinking about that. Thank you for that.
Okay, here's one that's really interesting. What are your thoughts on using the title doctor, because you have a PhD, and talking with people outside of academia? Could this actually hurt?
So that's a great question. So here's my thoughts on this, and this is my opinion. I want to make it clear it's not a fact. It's my opinion. Other people share this opinion. Other people disagree. My thought is you have worked your butt off to get a PhD. That is not an easy thing to do. And let's be honest, getting a PhD in astronomy or astrophysics or cosmology or planetary science, OMG, you guys, that rocks. That is incredibly difficult. That shows me so much about your expertise, but it also, more importantly, for other types of jobs outside of academia and research, it shows me what type of a problem solver you are. That doctor that you have that you can use in front of your name is a legitimate mark of your brand, of your promise of value, that you will stick to it, that you have a can-do attitude, that you're not afraid to peer into the void of a system that you can't even measure and solve a problem that you can't even define when you start, because that's what doing a dissertation in astronomy and physics and quite frankly, any STEM field is all about. It's looking for problems that haven't even been identified or solved yet. That takes a lot of courage. That takes a lot of stick-to-itiveness, and it really takes a lot of fortitude of a personality to stay with that. Not to mention your intelligence and your ability to work with teams and your strength of character. So I say, my opinion is, you earned that doctorate, you use that doctorate, you fly that doctorate. I don't mean that you go up to somebody and say, hello, I'm Dr. Alaina G. Levine. Call me doctor because I got a doctorate in astronomy. No, you don't do that. But certainly you can include it on your resume. Certainly you can include it in your signature. Certainly you can include it on your Twitter handle. You fly that flag. You worked hard for it. You deserve it. It's not going to work against you in the right types of organizations. For the companies that devalue a PhD, that devalue somebody who is a doctor, who has a doctorate in a subject, for companies that devalue that, my guess is that you probably would not want to work for those companies, because they're not going to value the other attributes that you have, which includes an innate and insatiable sense of curiosity and problem solving that can be applied to any ecosystem. So you can use that as a metric to decide whether or not an organization is worth your time, but you fly that doctor. I'll call you doctor because you are amazing. And by the way, I don't have a doctorate. I was just using that as an example. So don't call me doctor unless you want to stroke my ego. I'm thrilled if you call me doctor, even though I don't have a doctorate. But I will call you doctor if you have a doctorate because you earned it, and I'm proud of you.
Okay, I guess there's one that's kind of like for the AAS, and where exactly are these recordings going to be posted? And it's probably going to be in the career section of the AAS site. I know that the networking one that Alaina did previously is under a networking section, but we might collate them all and put them under one heading so it's easier to find, and we'll let you know where that is.
Yeah,
The next question.
Diane, in the follow-up email that you will receive from this webinar, you will get the link to that page, so the landing page for all this content.
Perfect. Do you have time for one more?
Yeah, we sure do.
Okay. What kind of diversification skills should I look to attain as an astronomy master's student?
So I'd be thinking about quote unquote business skills and soft skills. So the business skills are things like project management, budgeting and finance, which you could get from being on a grant, procurement and inventory. If your research group, buys stuff like dishes and mirrors for your telescope, you could be part of that team perhaps to learn how the inventory and procurement process works. Of course, grant writing itself is a business skill. Sales and marketing, by being more active perhaps on Twitter. So those are very, very useful, not to mention the strategic planning and project management. And you can actually, there's a project management institute, you can actually get a certificate in project management that will serve you well no matter what career you go into. But quite frankly, if you navigate outside of traditional corridors of astronomy graduates, so beyond the research institutions and beyond the universities, having a certificate or experience or skill set in project management really goes a long way. So it's a great, great diversification. It's something you can actually do right now in the middle of COVID. The soft skills come from engaging teams. So you want to be looking to improve your communication skills, your team management skills, your even having how to have a virtual meeting, not just a conference, but how to have a Zoom meeting where everybody is able to participate and communicate and add value to the organization and to the conversation. So those are the types of skills that you can look to diversify even right now.
Okay, there are some other questions. I don't know if you wanted to take them now or if you wanted to answer them offline.
I think we're probably out of time, but if people want to email me, I am happy to answer questions via email. And stay tuned for other webinars. We might even answer your question before you know it, but I'm happy to help in any way.
Okay. Well, thank you, Alaina. And I hope everyone enjoyed and learned a lot during this webinar. The next one, the part 2 of the Careers in Crisis series, as I'll call them, is going to be the reactive, and that'll be scheduled for June 10th, and we hope to see you there.
Thank you so much, Diane. And again, thank you to the American Astronomical Society and to all of you in the audience. You are amazing. This is a challenging time, but we're in this together. We can move forward. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh.